more than 100 ships, 10,000 pirates, samurais, giants, all totaling a bounty of over 25 billion berries. This is Emperor Monkey D. Luffy's army in the final war of One Piece. And the latest edition will shock you, as the strongest giant of Elbaf, Loki himself, is about to join Luffy in the final war against the world government. So let me go through every member of Yonko Luffy's Grand Fleet, who are now the strongest military force in the entire world. During the events of Dressrosa, the Straw Hats had to ally themselves with several other pirate groups to take down Doflamingo, because all these big shots were being turned into literal toy slaves to work in the Smile Factory. However, after Luffy defeated Doflamingo and freed everyone, these New World pirates wanted to pledge themselves to sailing under the Straw Hat flag. Naturally, Luffy turned them down initially, not wanting to impose on the freedom of others, and so a compromise would be made. While the members of the Straw Hat fleet would be free to live their lives and sail the seas however they saw fit, Luffy would be able to call on them for help when he needed it. And with that, the Straw Hats went from a crew of 11 to a grand fleet of over 5,600. However, while other Yonko like Whitebeard or Big Mom might have commanders, Luffy's Grand Fleet is entirely made up of representatives. This is extremely important. Why? Well, Luffy doesn't command anyone to do anything. These people are here because they want to be. That's why Mihawk back in Marineford stated how dangerous Luffy actually was. Normally, each group has one representative that speaks for them. It's more so a partnership and an alliance than a hierarchy like the other Yonko crews, even if everyone does technically see Luffy as their leader. Aside from the Straw Hats themselves, there are 7 representatives in the fleet, each with their own crew and ships. The first among them is Cavendish and the Beautiful Pirates. While we know 3 members of this crew, being Cavendish himself, Suleiman, and Fro the Horse, the crew consists of a total of 74 members who followed their captain after being exiled from the bourgeoisie kingdom. Okay, I'm gonna establish this right now, guys. I'm gonna butcher so many names in this video, so apologies in advance. But going back to these guys, the name bourgeoisie is actually extremely fitting, as each crewmate looks like they came right out of the European aristocracy. Meanwhile, their ship, the Sleeping Forest White Steed, looks like it would belong to some spoiled princess. Cause, you know, they appreciate the fine things in life. Together, the crew holds a bounty of over $500 million, with 330,000 of that belonging to Cavendish himself, who was dubbed a Super Rookie the year prior to the worst generation's rise to fame. And while that might make you think the rest of the crew is full of weaklings, you gotta remember that they survived the New World for 3 full years without ever aligning with another Yonko crew. If you don't think that's impressive, maybe you should ask Captain Mid about that. I mean, his arm would love to tell you that story. The second representative is obviously my goat, Bart, who leads the Barto Club, of which we know 2 of its 56 members, being Bart himself and Gambia. This group was originally just a bunch of thugs who grew up in small towns, but Bart became inspired by Luffy to become a pirate, and so he led all of his friends to the seas where they could specialize in bringing the ruckus anywhere that going Luffy senpai brings them. Basically, these guys just went around causing war crimes while sucking Luffy off, like they were glazing on another level. Like the Straw Hats, the Barto Club managed to reach the New World from the East Blue, earning a 267 million bounty as a group, 200 million of that said bounty belonging to their captain. Remember, Bart is known as the freaking cannibal, and while that's just because he tends to mock a lot of people, he's no pushover. His devil fruit is actually insane, as the Bari Bari no Mi allows him to create barriers by crossing his fingers, which, mind you, are seemingly indestructible. Attacks from Bellamy, Delinger, Gladius, and Hakuba all had 0 effect. Even Elisabello II's King Punch, which can demolish an entire fortress, couldn't get past it. At the same time, they're a bunch of goofballs, as they don't have a real navigator and instead call Gambia's grandmother for advice on what to do next. And if that isn't enough, the entire crew is prone to getting seasick, which is not exactly the best fit for pirates. I mean, there's no wonder these guys got one shot by Shanks. Our third representative is Sai, who brings with him the second largest group in the alliance with 1,000 10,000 members of the Happu Navy. Prior to competing for the Maramara no Mi in Kurita Coliseum, Sai was the 13th leader of the Happu Navy, led by the Qingzhou family of Kono country. This group has a particularly impressive history, being rivals with Garp, collecting a massive hoard of treasure, and Sai himself was even able to beat Lao Ji in combat. On top of that, the Happu Army has a signature technique called the 8 Impact Fists, which use vibrations in combination with their attacks to break through armor and shields. In many ways, it's similar to the type of hockey that Luffy learned in Wano, which allowed him to finally damage Kaido. At this time, we know of 3 standing members of the Happu Navy: Sai, Boo, and their newly added Baby 5, who was previously an officer of the Doflamingo family. Altogether, the Happu Navy's bounty is at least 752 million, and Sai only makes up 210 of that, so there's considerable amounts of power here spread throughout the crew. This gives the fleets, and therefore Luffy, a literal standing army which can be used to challenge their enemies. From one of the biggest groups of the fleet to the smallest, next is the Ideo Pirates under, well, Ideo. There are only 4 members of this crew, each of which were contestants at the Kurita Coliseum, these being Ideo, Blue Gilly, Abdallah, and Jeet. Ideo is a member of the Long Arm tribe, being able to produce punches that explode with enough power to send Harujin flying. Blue Gilly, on the other, well, foot, is a Long Leg tribe member who fights with Zhao Kun Do. His kicks are like steel whips and were able to knock out Dagama in one hit. Abdallah is a former bounty hunter who works with his partner Jeet. These two fight in tandem and always take advantage of one being attacked while the other retaliates from behind. These 4 could act as potential spear points in combat. Along with Sai, each could lead their own battalion and act as the vanguard leading troops against the enemy. These 4 were given a ship by Arlumbus and eventually came across a battle being waged between the Long Arm and Long Leg tribes. This could have been kind of awkward since half their crew fits on these different sides of the conflict, but rather than picking sides, the Ideo Pirates just took down both crews at the same time instead. Okay, so I know I said these guys were the smallest crew in the Grand Fleet, and that's technically true, but now I want to talk about the literal, actual, physically smallest, being none other than Leo and the Tontatta Pirates, who sail on the Usolint. This group of 200 dwarfs has the incredibly high bounty of 0. Zip, zilch, nada, nothing. For all the mischief these guys can create and any power they might actually have at their disposal, it's hard to take them seriously when they're 9 inches tall. I mean, even the ship they sail on is only the size of an average person. In general, the dwarves are extremely agile, can make any plants grow, and are surprisingly strong and durable for their size. Essentially, they offer a whole 200-person group of allies who are incredibly hard to detect, which is important because it makes them really good for potential espionage missions they have in the future, especially during the final war with the world government. Now, from the smallest to the biggest, we have Harujin's new giant warrior pirates on the Nogflar. Nogflar? Noglfar? I don't know, it sounds Norse, so Nogflar. Like the name suggests, this crew is composed exclusively of giants, and even though there are only 5 of them, that does count for a lot when you consider they range from 55 to 72 feet tall. The crew consists of Harujin the captain, Stanson the shipwright, Rode the navigator, Goldberg the cook, and Jerd the doctor. When they worked for Buggy's delivery, they were considered S-class mercenaries, and were a massive loss for the organization when they resigned. These will undoubtedly be a force which supports the entire fleet, towering above the others and standing as pillars of strength for their allies. Mountains of terror to their enemies. Like the first scene of Attack on Titan, that was scary, but it's child's play compared to what sort of hell these guys can create. But obviously, we aren't done yet with the giants because we still have to talk about Elbaf and Loki and his crew and all the giants that will join Luffy after that arc, but put a pin in that and we'll be touching upon that later. And this brings us to the final official representative in the fleet, Arlumbus and his Yonta Maria fleet. This dude is bringing his own grand fleet of 56 ships into the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. For reference, the whole of the Straw Hat Alliance is 5,600 members, and Arlumbus represents 4,300 of that. I mean, I purposely avoid taking math classes, but that sounds like a pretty good number. The math is mathing. Despite their size, we really don't know all that much about this fleet's feats. However, we do know 2 things. 1, Arlumbus holds a bounty of just under 150 million, which makes sense considering the amount of pure physical strength this man has. We often talk about the power Zoro showed by slicing through Pika, but a lot of people forget that Arlumbus was the man who threw him all that distance. Arlumbus also has Admiral's Dignity, a technique which allows him to control others by yelling orders at them. Second, we know just how massive this crew really is. When we say 4,300 people, you might be like, okay, okay, yeah, whatever. But when this fleet is lined up and spans 5 kilometers, you might want to reconsider their sheer might. And that makes up the entire Straw Hat Grand Fleet. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Please subscribe. Psych! Okay, maybe it does end on paper, but the Straw Hats also have allies all across the world who would definitely come running to their aid if Luffy needed them. Some of these groups might not be able to help on the battlefield, but they could be useful in terms of political weight, influence, resources, or the services they provide. First and foremost, we of course have the kingdoms that Luffy has saved or liberated. While not all of these could or would be able to supply an army, they can still assist the Straw Hats in any political matters. For example, if there's a meeting of world powers as we move towards the end of the series, or if it comes time for the Straw Hats to actually battle IMU and the world government, these nations can speak up and try to win over other kingdoms and the masses. First, we have the kingdom of Dressrosa and their leaders Riku, Rebecca, Kairos, and Viola, who Luffy saved from Doflamingo. The ability to vouch for Luffy while also being able to say that one of the world government's warlords had usurped their throne is a huge hit to their credibility. Kairos is also known to be a legendary hero, so he's sure to help out on the battlefield too. The same could also be said about Alabasta, which is being dominated by Crocodile and Baroque works. Not to mention the Gorosei and Imu have been framing the revolutionaries for Cobra's death. This is another massive problem for them. When another king hears about this, they'll need to reconsider what's stopping the world rulers from killing them next. And of course, Alabasta gives us back Vivi, who will 100% be playing a vital role in the story due to Imu's connection with Nefertari D. Lily. Oh, I gotta mention this. The strongest One Piece characters are also coming back. Karu and the Duck Squad, they are about to solo Blackbeard. You heard it here first. The Duck Squad is going to be... But speaking of Vivi, she's currently with the former king of the Drum Kingdom. While not exactly a powerhouse, it's still one of the representatives for Revelry, and having Kureha's medical wisdom and experience could be very helpful. I mean, she did teach Chopper. That's saying a lot. We also have the Ryugu Kingdom on Fishman Island, as Luffy helped save them from Hody Jones. Not to mention, with Luffy recently becoming Joy Boy, this makes their bond even stronger, as Fishman Island has a very important history with Joy Boy. But the most important thing here is obviously Shirahoshi, the ancient weapon Poseidon. This is just about as powerful as an ally can get, since, you know, she can control the Sea Kings. Like, that's a big deal. Imagine this, right? We have ships full of war supplies and food going straight to the Marine HQ or Mary Joie. But then all of a sudden, boom, dozens of Sea Kings just come in and destroy that entire fleet. Like, the Ryugu Kingdom itself has control over the seas. It can create blockades wherever and whenever. And considering most of One Piece's world map is covered by ocean, I'd say this is a pretty good advantage for Luffy and the Straw Hats. By extension, we could also throw the Sun Pirates into the mix here, with Jinbei on the crew and the Sun Pirates and Luffy now being bros for life, especially considering they left the Big Mom Pirates to help Luffy past. Also, Sumire. It could never hurt to have the literal Kraken on your side. Just saying. Next, we have the big one, Wano, an entire island made up of samurais and ninjas who have just been freed from Kaido and Orochi's rule. This includes the Akazaya 9, or the Red Scabbards, who, mind you, are some of the strongest warriors we've seen in the series, all having unique fighting styles and different powers, even made up of some minks, which put Sulong into the mix too. Mind you, both of the minks, part of the Akazaya 9, were able to beat Perospero. If we had to gauge them, I'd say they're around Jack's level in strength, which means we have a group that is basically Yonko third in command, ready to help Luffy whenever. This doesn't even include Momo, who has the powers of damn Kaido and can turn into a dragon. Like, yeah, he wasn't the best at using this power during the actual arc itself, but he was able to hold up all of Onigashima, and I'm sure he's been training ever since. But of course, the greatest asset we get from Wano is Yamato. I mean, if she ever decided to leave the island, she'd easily have a 1 billion berry bounty, not just because she's Kaido's child, but also just due to her insane power. I mean, she's pretty much an honorary member of the Straw Hats, and turned the tide against the fight with her dad, fighting him one-on-one for an extended period of time and clashing against Thunder Bogas equally, while also landing in significant hits. God, I totally just butchered a bunch of names again, didn't I? Ugh, I'm so sorry. On top of all that, Wano serves as a massive resource. This is where the poneglyphs were created, which is why Odin was able to help Roger read them. It's likely others in the kingdom would still be able to understand them as well. If not Momonosuke, then at the very least Sukiyaki should be able to. We also have to remember that Kaido's weapon factories are all still here too. And while I know the people of the nation might want to get rid of them, it'll take a long time to completely demolish them. So it might be a good idea to keep them up and running until the end of the final war, just so they can provide the Straw Hat Grand Fleet with a plethora of different weapons and gear and all that good stuff. Then there's the fact that Wano was where Sea Prism Stones come from, a whole supply of materials that could turn off opponents' Devil Fruit skills, which would be immeasurably valuable against people like the Blackbeard crew, the Admirals, or the Gorosei. But most importantly, Wano is where Pluton is currently resting, which if we add that to Luffy's arsenal too, that gives him a second ancient weapon alongside Poseidon. Tied to Wano, we also have Zou and the Minks. While not as powerful on the surface, they do have some fairly strong combatants. Plus, if they timed the battle right, an army of Sulongs could basically win a majority of the fights in an instant. Remember, Inuarashi and Nekomashi? Dude, I can't pronounce these names. The cat and dog from the samurais. That's what I'm talking about. They're part of Zou, members of the Yakuzaya 9 who I already talked about earlier. Not to mention, we have Carrot, who on top of her electro powers also has access to Sulong. In the past, she even took on basically the entire Big Mom fleet present on Whole Cake Island at that time by herself. The Minks of Zou also act as lore keepers, which could be helpful in deciphering more information about Joy Boy and the Forgotten Century. And come on, we gotta talk about Zunisha, a whole giant-ass elephant. Beyond just his size, he's strong enough to lift up a whole freaking city and move non-stop with that city on top of him for 800 years. That's incredible strength and stamina. And of course, he can destroy an entire fleet of ships with just the swing of his trunk, as we saw him do with Jack. The Kuja Pirates and Boa Hancock are also way more than willing to help out. Losing her warlord status pretty much gets rid of her only excuse not to. And with her now back to being a full-blown pirate, she has a bounty of 1,659,000,000 berries. On top of that, her entire race is also well known and notorious. They're so busted that the Kuja Pirates and Boa were given a warlord position solely because they didn't want to deal with them, being so strong that they've remained independent for centuries. Also, they all have access to hockey, so yeah, they're broken as hell. Then there's the Germa Kingdom, and after the events of Whole Cake, there's definitely an open door for them to reach out and try to help the Straw Hats, or at least Sanji, for saving them from Big Mom, at least while Judge is still in command. On top of the Vinsmoke super soldiers, Germa would bring unbelievably advanced science with them, which could really help the Straw Hats and give them an advantage. Now, with so many members, what are they gonna ride on the sea? Well, fear not, because we have Water 7 on Luffy's army too, including the best shipwrights on the entire planet, Iceberg and his galley law company. The only shipwrights we've ever met on par with Frankie. With the actual Pluton available now, they could even take it apart to supplement other ships, or even upgrade the ancient weapon itself. The Frankie family is also on Water 7, and while they aren't exactly the strongest or smartest, there is something to be said about just having a group of thugs and dismantlers at your disposal. If we look up to Skypiea, the Shandorians could also be brought into the fray to repay their debt for Luffy defeating Enel. Similarly, the Sariyama alliance from Jaya could help if there are any underwater or scavenging missions. For example, resurfacing Pluton. Okay, but let's be real. The one group that we're all looking forward to seeing join the fleet the most is, of course, the giant warriors of Elbaf. We've seen time and time again how strong these guys are, whether that be in Little Garden, Enies Lobby, or now. Elbaf is home to a ton of warrior giants who are stronger than anyone could imagine. Just look at the two OGs themselves, Dory and Froggy, dual captains of the giant warrior pirates. These guys are so strong they fought against each other constantly for over 100 years. But before that, their crew was really infamous, known to have terrorized the world with their legendary strength. And I mean, these guys are not messing around. Just look at when they came to help Luffy out at Egghead. Oh, we got an enormous marine fleet? Child's play, bro. They didn't even delay these guys, as they just cut through several of the marine battleships. These insane feats have increased the two captains' bounty from just a measly 100 million to a whopping 1.8 billion. And they aren't even the scariest person on this island, bro. As we also got Loki, a man who 1, hates the world government, 2, thinks he's the sun god who will free the world from destruction, and 3, needed Shanks, an emperor, to beat him in the past. That's how strong this dude is, and he's gonna join up with Luffy to represent Elbaf in the Straw Hat fleet as Elbaf's new king. If I was IMU, I'd be shitting bricks right now. Finally, while Dragon has been off getting milk the whole series, he and the revolutionaries are likely to get involved for the final battle against evil in the world government too. Because that's literally their whole goal. It's to bring down the world government. It would be kind of weird if they didn't show up. But we have a whole video coming out soon explaining the Revolutionary Army's history and members, as Dragon is on his way to Elbaf right now.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Did Sid really change the script to include that? Dragon is not coming to Elbaf, bro. Just give it up.